Değerli konuklarımız, Türkiye'nin ilk ve en büyük yapay zeka zirvesi bütün hızıyla devam ediyor. Agentic AI, daha önce hiç duydunuz mu? Duymadıysanız bile bu sabah duydunuz çünkü bahsedildi. Gerçekten de iş dünyasında çığır açacak bir iş akışı. Geleneksel yapay zeka sistemlerinden farklı olarak bağımsız düşünme, karar alma kabiliyeti sunuyor. Bunlar aslında veriye dayalı olarak hızla, isabetle karar alabilen ve arka planda çalışan yapay zeka ajanları da diyebiliriz. Büyük dil modelleriyle çalışan güçlü bir yapay zeka altyapısı diye de özetlenebilir. Müşteri hizmetlerinden tedarik zincirine, finansal analizden sağlık çözümlerine kadar aslında pek çok sektörde verimliliği büyük ölçüde artırıyor. Müşterinin talebini görüyor, ona göre kendi kendine bir karar alıyor, aksiyona geçiyor. Haliyle şirketin rekabet gücünü de artırıyor. Bu alanda dünya çapında önemli bir öncü konuma sahip SambaNova'ya şimdi kulak vereceğiz. Şirketlere bağımsız, esnek, öğrenen yapay zeka iş akışları sunuyor. Verileri gerçek zamanlı analiz edebiliyor ve karmaşık operasyonel süreçlerde kendi başına ilerleyebiliyor. Alkışlarınızla SambaNova Systems EMEA Genel Müdürü Sayın Alex White geliyor sahneye.
Çok teşekkür ederim. I was here a year ago and I only managed 3 words in Turkish and that's all you're going to get. I'm afraid it's going to be in English. I'm going to talk to you about what we see as the next and most important wave of adoption of Gen AI. And that is when all of you and all of the businesses and all of the governments in the world start to deploy these models. If you've been sitting in the room like I have today, you'll have heard that only 10% of AI models are actually in production today. 90% still to go. That 90% represents the return on investment, the investment in time in training and fine-tuning the models. And that 90% of value will only be realized with your private data. This revolution is not about ChatGPT. It's not about GPUs. It's not about infrastructure. It's about data. Your opportunity is to use your data to change the world. So that's what we're going to talk about. SambaNova in all of this, we are an infrastructure company. We make full systems from silicon chips. This isn't the only one we have, but I happen to have it with me. From chips, software, the best open source models, full stack, coming to Turkey, on cloud, on premise, 10 times the power of performance for fast inference, at 1/10 of the power usage, 1/10 of what you need for the latest GPUs. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is what I watched on Netflix at the weekend, because I think it's interesting. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great documentary. Go and watch it. It's called Return to Space, because it got me thinking about the analogy between space travel, space exploration, going to the moon. Obviously, we were there in the 1960s when I was born, incidentally. But now, 40 years later, Tesla, SpaceX, Elon Musk, is maybe democratizing what it takes to repeatedly go back into space, because they have a rocket that can be reused, and it's going to be 100 times cheaper. And that's great. But it still feels to me very much like this is only within reach if you can afford it. This is only within reach if you can power the latest GPU. By the way, their strategy right now is to build data center capacity in the Nordics, in Scandinavia. Do you know why? because it's minus 50 degrees centigrade in the winter. They can cool the systems. That isn't going to be any good for your private data unless you want to put it on a cloud in Scandinavia or in Barcelona or in some other data center space. You need your own cloud. So we need to do something else. The other thing about space exploration that I found really interesting in terms of this discussion, think about all the innovation that we all benefited from, despite the fact that very few nations were able to afford to do this. Everybody in this room, for years, has been using technology that was developed in space. And all of us will, if we haven't already, be benefiting from AI for years and years to come. So, I would say the most interesting thing that's happened in the last 12 months, since I was last here in Turkey, is the big, friendly llama smiling down on us from the sky. Because this is a massive commitment in the open source community, and the result of it is that we now have many, many models, and Meta's not the only company to be doing this. Google announced Gemini would be open source. OpenAI released 0.1, their open source version of their model. Mistral is available in Europe, but no one's talking about Mistral for the last several months because Llama has overtaken the dialogue, and that is because their model outperforms most of the rest, and the 405B, the 405 billion parameter model, is certainly for many use case applications as good, if not better, than the closed source models that we've been using for years. So this is a really interesting and important and vital turning point that you have to take notice of. The other thing that's happened more recently, there were 2 Nobel Prizes awarded for AI, effectively, AlphaFold and AI development out of Geoffrey Hinton's lab. Europe, however, is confused, conflicted, maybe, certainly thinking very hard about what to do next. France has appointed, for the first time, an AI minister because Macron recognizes the importance of this. I was in Sweden last week. CoreWeave announced a $2.2 billion investment in a new data center in Sweden with GPUs, of course, very cold in the winter. $2.2 billion investment. The same time that the Swedish Minister for Education talked about banning AI in the classroom. So what does this mean for everybody in the room? It means that this is your opportunity. This is the opportunity to change what the speaker from Meta said this morning, again, if you were in the room. Of the global top 50 companies, there isn't a single company in Europe that started business less than 30 years ago. That is not going to be the case in the next decade. The global top 50, there will be new companies, new sectors, new innovation, driven by AI, and why not in Turkey? So what is Turkey going to be famous for in Gen AI? I can tell you one big clue. You have more digitized data in Turkey at a government level than most other countries in the world. So will Turkey be famous for AI in healthcare? Take all of that private data, every citizen in the country, as you know, available on your phone as an app. Take all that private data, but innovate on that data. Innovate to the point of view where you can deliver healthcare better than anybody else in the world. You have the best diagnosis, right first time, the right treatment first time, the highest recovery rate, the fastest speed. You could be world leading. The reason is you have the data, but it's private data. I don't suggest you send that to Scandinavia to do the modeling work. You need to do it in Turkey. So how are we going to do that? Well, a little bit more about SambaNova. I showed you our chip. We're a startup company. We raised $1.1 billion because we had a great idea that I'll tell you more about. But more importantly, these gentlemen have been working together for nearly 30 years in some cases. So our system architecture and design team, our chip design team, came out of Sun Microsystems. We've been building silicon for 30 years. So we're already on our 4th generation silicon, the one I showed you in my pocket. That silicon was developed specifically for a use case that the US government sponsored into atomic energy research. And when we made that breakthrough silicon, when we made that new technology in 2017, it was because there wasn't any other silicon on the marketplace that could do what we needed to do with a very large data model to start to inquire, interrogate, understand what's going on in the atomic energy process. So this is purpose-built for AI. It's using a data flow architecture, not instruction set. And that's where it stands apart from the GPU. That's how we go beyond what they're able to do with a graphics processor that I think this year is 27 years old in design. Instruction set means you have to go off chip onto the network, very fast network, and then back on chip each time, in, out, in, out, in, out. If you're doing that with your new Turkish AI healthcare model that is world-beating, you're waiting seconds for every one of those processes. Seconds turn into minutes, turn into maybe unacceptable delays. Certainly if you're running a business or you're trying to outcompete Unilever on the world stage or whoever it might be, you need something different. So let me break this down in terms of what it would take to democratize the use of AI in Turkey. And we're going to talk about 3 aspects of that. Number 1 is to recognize that the opportunity is now to move into production, to move from training to inference. Secondly, recognize and understand the importance of private data and why you need to control your private data. You need to own it. This is the highest value asset you'll have in this new era of AI, and you must train it on your infrastructure, behind your firewall, and not give it to anybody else, because if you do that, you're going to devalue it. And thirdly, how do we do this without spending $2.2 billion on a 150 megawatt data center in Scandinavia to run a new cloud service? Because you certainly can't do that here in Turkey, not for the next 5 to 10 years. You need to do something at much lower cost, higher efficiency, or you're going to be left behind. So what do I mean by from training to inference? I mean, there are a lot of practitioners in the room, so I'm not going to dive into too much technical detail here, but fundamentally, we've learned in the last year, certainly, that even without any business context, any training data whatsoever, the quality of the base models, the open source and the closed source base models like ChatGPT, they're pretty good at zero-shot learning. Basically, if you were running a call center, you could apply one of these models to your tickets, your support tickets, and it would, out of the box, without any fine-tuning, break down tickets into broad categories based on what it's been trained on. You can see how easily you can then move to better fine-tuning, taking some real business examples, and now the model can start to recognize business patterns within the same data set. So now your categorization gets a bit more specific and useful. Like, here are all the tickets for billing-related queries. It saves time, it improves efficiency, you're giving a better service to the customer. Agentic systems, ultimately, in this example that I'm using, that will be a call center experience like you've never had before. Because that system of the future will be fully autonomous. It, the model, the agents, will know where to go to find sources of information about you, about your service, your contract, other people who have had the same experience, what the fix was previously, how it was dealt with instantaneously at your fingertips. That will be a world-beating service. That will be a killer application. We're not there yet, but we're getting very, very close to it because the model capability is already there. What you need to do is start training more of your private data, making it more expert, and obviously doing that in a controlled way, in a way that delivers the best return on investment, but also staying within the boundaries of what's ethically right, the responsibility you have towards your customers, towards your business, towards your partners and suppliers, et cetera, But this is the moment where we're ready to start doing this. Most hyperscale cloud companies will tell you, if you ask them the question, and they're certainly reporting this already, they've seen the trend. They're moving from 90% training, 10% inference, and it's going to be 50-50 very soon, within the next months. We're moving to a world that's going to be in production. Andrew Ng has noticed this. Hopefully you've heard of him, but he leads one of the world-leading research teams in this area. It talks about different use cases for these new agentic systems. What he talks about, though, is the importance of fast inference. Fast token generation will be incredibly important. Because if you have that inefficiency on the GPU going off-chip onto the network to check and then report back onto chip again many thousands of times, that's where you're adding latency. The systems of the future, the applications of the future that are going to happen in the next 12 months before I come back and speak again, hopefully next year, inshallah. These systems need to be blazingly fast. You're going to access many models, large and small, and more of your private data in expert models. And therefore, you need to manage that high-speed, instantaneous almost, switching out of models so the agents can do their work. It can't be many minutes. It can't be many minutes because on the left-hand side here, if you're that company delivering the call center experience where the chatbot doesn't know that you've taken out insurance for this canceled holiday, the call ends abruptly and leaves you as a customer probably not coming back. This is a very simple example. But even with a little bit of fine-tuning, you should be able to check much more personality of why that person is calling, what the problem is, the tone of their voice, the sentiment analysis, experience of what we've done before, where has this problem happened in the last 24 hours, the last hour, the last 10 minutes, and deliver that information at your fingertips. That is a world-leading company operating with agent models. And that's what's right in front of us. So, look, this is the enabling technology. This is designed for big data. This has 1.5 terabytes of addressable memory per chip. We ship full stack system, a rack, with 16 of those chips, 24 terabytes of memory. That means you can hold 10 trillion parameters of data in memory. That's how you get blazingly fast interactivity. That's also how you do blazingly fast switching. In the middle here is the representation of the call center app in green. No need to pull from disk or host memory. No need to introduce latency in the process. This is the fastest way. It doesn't mean that we're going to see the end of GPUs. GPUs are perfectly reasonable and fit for purpose in training. Very large batch sizes, incredible teraflops power. They will still be used for that purpose. But you need to build a new branch of efficiency that if the request that's coming in from the developer for the customer is for fast agentic model response, you need something other than the GPU. Number two, so let's talk a bit more about private data, and in particular, the llama looking out from behind its compound, the private data llama looking out in the last 12 months at the open source world and saying, is this the right time? Is this the right time to jump the fence? Well, all those llamas have jumped to the fence. They're now available to you to use. And talking more about SambaNova's approach to this, we provide bare metal systems, so researchers around the world We're the most widely used AI accelerator in the US research labs, for example. They can work directly with the bare metal and build their own models on top of that and drive their research projects. You can also access this in the SambaNova cloud. That's available at SambaNova.ai. It's a US-based cloud service, but it's coming to every part of the world and hopefully coming here in Turkey very soon. And it's the same experience then, thirdly, when you want to deploy on-premise behind your firewall. We ship one of our servers, 600 and something kilograms, on a boat probably, to Turkey. It takes 30 days. We power it on in your data center, and less than 30 hours later, it's up and running your training with your private data behind your firewall. That's how we make it possible. This is what's running. This is not my analysis. This is from a company called Artificial Analysis. Figures they published a few weeks ago, actually, so these will have even been updated since then. These are the speeds that we're achieving on the SambaNova cloud. On the 405B at the bottom, the largest model, you can't even run that on some cloud platforms. We're achieving 132 tokens per second, I think now up to 140 tokens per second. So what about lower cost? 3 things. Move to inference with private data at lower cost. Well, NVIDIA and their latest generation GPUs, they talked about 25% more efficient. They didn't talk about how much power you need at the rack. That's a new data center. That's a completely new requirement. And Jensen at GTC talked about $1 trillion needs to be invested in new data center capability. This is what he's talking about. Or you can do that with us at 11 kilowatts in one rack. 11 versus 120. So, what about other GPU alternatives? Briefly, because we're not the only competitor to NVIDIA for fast inference. You have the Grok or Cerebras clouds. You may have heard of those. What you need to understand is that Grok are doing what we do on one rack for the 70B model, Llama 3.1, with hundreds of processors on 9 racks. And Cerebras are doing it on 4 racks. So we're still substantially cheaper and more agile than anybody else in the market. My takeaway for all of you is that SambaNova can democratize this next wave of inference. When you're ready, come and take a look at us. We're 10 times faster on inference at 1/10 of the cost for power, and all with your private data. This is something to get excited about, and it's coming to Turkey, on cloud, on premise. Please come and talk to us. If you have the opportunity before you go, we're right outside door 1 by the innovator stage, overlooking the gallery with our partner Exodus. I'd be very happy to answer your questions then, but thank you very much for listening.
Evet, Alex'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Gerçekten yine ilham veren bir sunum. 10 kat hızlı etki yaratabilmekten söz etti Alex White. Ve verinizle dünyanızı, şirketinizdeki dünyayı değiştirebilirsiniz. Yani bir devrim yaratacaksanız datanızı kullanın diyor. Ve Türkiye hangi alanda yapay zekada öne çıkacak sorusuna da aslında güzel bir tavsiyesi oldu. Özellikle en çok kamu verisine sahip olduğu sağlık alanında Türkiye AI sağlıkla öne çıkabilir. Tabii bu özel verileri Türkiye'de tutmak ve yapay zeka aracılığıyla eğitmek koşuluyla.